Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
My parents moved to a new house last month. It's right across from the town center, in one of the main car parks where people have to pay to park. They saved for years to buy this place. Dad has trouble walking after working construction for decades, so being close to everything helps him. Mom likes being able to walk to the shops. The council put in resident-only parking permits because people try to avoid paying for the car park by parking on their street. My parents got their permits right away. The parking situation in town has been a problem for years. The car park charges £2.50 for the first hour and £3 for each additional hour. Many locals think this is too expensive, so they hunt for free spots on residential streets. My parents witnessed 4 separate arguments about parking in their first week living there. I called them yesterday at 7:15 p.m. They told me what happened a few days ago. Dad went to the hardware store for supplies to build a garden shed. He spent £120 on materials and needed to get them inside before the rain started. When he got home around 4:30 p.m., he parked outside their house and started unloading heavy bags of cement, timber, and tools from his car trunk. While lifting a heavy bag, he heard someone behind him. He turned to see an older woman walking toward him, waving her walking stick. She wore a blue coat and carried a shopping bag from the local supermarket. The woman told him she was sick of people like him. Dad asked what she meant. She said she was sick of people who clogged up the streets because they didn't want to pay for parking. She called it a disgrace and laziness. Dad stood there holding the cement bag, surprised. She kept talking. She complained about seeing this every day. She said young people think they can park wherever they want instead of using the car park because they're cheap. She mentioned that people actually lived there. When Dad tried to speak, she cut him off. She said she lived in town for 40 years and never saw such selfishness. She said he was blocking the street and asked what would happen if an ambulance needed to get through. She threatened to call the traffic wardens and get him fined £50. Dad let her finish. She went on about lazy people taking up streets, how everyone was inconsiderate, and how she would report him to the council. When she stopped talking, Dad asked if he could show her something. She asked what. Dad put down the cement bag, took out his house keys, went to the front door of the house he was parked in front of, and opened it. She stood there with her mouth open, not moving. She didn't apologize. She just turned and walked away. The next day, Dad was planting flowers in the front garden when he saw her walking on the other side of the street. When she saw him, she crossed to the opposite side and hurried past, looking straight ahead. Dad found out from his neighbor that the woman lives 3 streets away and volunteers at the library on Tuesdays and Thursdays. She apparently confronts at least 2 people per week about parking. In the 6 weeks they've lived there, my parents have seen her several times. She always pretends not to see them. Mom waves at her when they cross paths, which makes the woman walk faster. Last week, Dad saw her arguing with the mail carrier who had parked momentarily to deliver packages. I asked Dad if he felt bad about embarrassing her. He said no and hoped next time she'd think before assuming things about people. Dad has since put a small sign in their car window that reads, "Resident to avoid future confrontations." I asked my parents to tell me if anything else happens with her. They invited me to visit this weekend, so I'll get to see the house and maybe the infamous parking vigilante for myself. No matter how old we get, some people never stop minding everyone else's business. My family owns a water store. We sell filtered water, bottles, coolers, Crocs, and accessories in a small strip mall shop. My parents started it, but I became co-owner when I turned 18. We open from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. with 24/7 outdoor vending machines for after-hours customers. One evening I had a busy day helping customers and carrying bottles to cars. At 7 p.m. I was tired. I cleared everyone out and sanitized the faucets. I still needed to do inventory and create an order list for my dad. Being a teenager then, I put it off all day. I called my family to say I'd be an extra hour. That's when an older woman pulled into the parking lot. Sometimes people show up right after closing at 7 o'clock or 7:05. I usually point them to the outdoor machines or let them in for just a gallon. This was different. This woman stacked multiple 5-gallon bottles by our door and knocked like it was an emergency. I ignored her while doing inventory, but after 5 minutes of her yelling and knocking, I walked over. It was 7:20 p.m. Everything was shut down. If I let her in, I'd have to restart the closing process. I went to the door but kept it closed. I told her we were closed but pointed to the outdoor vending. She asked me to open the door to fill her bottles. I said sorry, we're closed, and pointed to the vending machine again. She told me to unlock the door because she wanted water. I tried explaining I'd shut everything down, but she cut me off. She claimed she'd been a loyal customer since opening and knew the real owners who would want to serve her. I tried speaking again but couldn't finish. She pointed out the lights were on and she could see me inside, demanding I let her in. I told her we were going in circles. Then I had an idea. If closed meant no lights to her, that's what she'd get. I turned off every light, including outdoor floods, and closed all blinds. She couldn't see anything inside now. I grabbed a flashlight and went back to inventory in the dark, but she started kicking the door and making more noise. Minutes later, I heard sirens and saw flashing lights. She'd called the police. They knocked and called for me to unlock the door. I raised the blinds and turned the lights back on. The first police officer asked if I could open the door. I said of course. The woman tried to enter with the officer, carrying 2 bottles. The officer tried to make her wait outside. I asked if he could keep her out, explaining I'd asked her to leave several times. The second officer held her arm while she complained. The first officer said they were called about a burglary in progress and wanted to check the place. I told him no problem. I'm a co-owner of my family's shop and invited him to look around. He asked for ID, so I gave him my license, which he called in. He asked why I was there after hours with a flashlight. I explained everything, closing at 7, doing inventory, and the woman demanding service 20 minutes late. The officer looked unsure. He said they got a call about someone suspicious in the building. I offered to let him call my father and pointed to our emergency contact list. He said that wasn't necessary and asked if the owner's number was on top. He called my dad, introduced himself, and explained they had someone claiming to be his son doing inventory. After listening, he thanked my dad and said I wasn't in trouble. He told me to continue working but keep the lights on. Then he went outside where the woman still stood with her bottles, trying to push past him. The second officer grabbed her arm again and they talked. I tried not to listen, but the voices got louder. The officer told the woman she could use the vending machine or go somewhere else, suggesting she choose the latter. Next, I heard bottles hitting the ground like they were thrown. The woman left in the police car. We never saw her again, though her grandchildren later found our shop and still buy water from us. I finished inventory with the lights on as suggested. When I told my family what happened, they were surprised someone would call police over water bottles. My half-brother was 9 years older than me and used that age gap to make my life miserable. Since our parents worked long hours, he often babysat me, which meant hours of torment. His favorite hobby was locking me outside when he was supposed to watch me. Through the window, he'd tell me I needed fresh air and to stop being such a baby while I stood outside begging to come back in. He also enjoyed games that were just excuses to hurt me. He'd pin me down on the floor, sit on my chest so I couldn't move, and repeatedly tap the same spot on my forehead. When I cried out that it hurt, he'd say this was Chinese water torture, and he was toughening me up. When I was 5, I asked why we had different dads. He told me my real dad was from another planet, and that's why I was weird. For weeks, I checked myself in the mirror looking for alien features. I even asked my teacher if aliens could look human. The worry on her face should have told me my brother was lying. He had all the newest gaming systems, PlayStation, Nintendo 64, Dreamcast displayed in his room. Whenever I asked to play Mario Kart for a little while, he'd say the games were too expensive and I'd break them with my stupid hands, then tell me to go play with my baby toys. By age 10, I was done with his treatment. My chance came when he announced he was spending the entire summer at computer camp, followed by a road trip before moving to Arizona for college. He packed his clothes but left his car in our barn and his video game memory cards in his desk drawer. The day after he left, I went into his room and took all his memory cards. There were about 15 of them for different games like Final Fantasy, Resident Evil, and Metal Gear Solid. Hundreds of hours of saved gameplay. I spent the afternoon burying them across our 5-acre property. Some went under trees, others by the creek, a few in the vegetable garden. I even hid one in our neighbor's flower bed while helping her water plants. But I wasn't finished. His car sat in the barn under a tarp. I pulled back the cover and opened the back door. I had a large jar of dill pickles from the fridge, the fancy kind with extra garlic and spices. I dumped everything on the back floor carpet. Pickles, juice, garlic cloves, dill sprigs, all soaking into the fabric. I put the tarp back and went about my day. Summer in our town hit the high 90s with lots of humidity. Our barn had no air conditioning or airflow. For 3 months, pickle juice fermented in the heat, soaking deeper into the carpet, seats, and eventually the whole car. When my brother returned in August, he checked his car first thing. I was eating breakfast when I heard him scream from the barn. He ran into the house asking what that smell was and saying something had died in his car. It smelled like rotting garbage and vinegar. My mom went to look and came back saying it smelled like pickles, wondering how they got in the car. I kept eating my cereal face blank. He said he didn't know he had covered it. This was impossible. The timing was perfect. He was leaving for Arizona in 3 days. Despite having the car professionally cleaned, the smell stayed in the fabric and air vents. He couldn't afford another car and shipping it later wasn't an option. The night before he left, he came to my room and asked if I had done something to the car. I looked him in the eye and said I didn't know what he was talking about. He said whatever. He was leaving tomorrow anyway. I told him to have fun in Arizona, mentioning I heard it gets hot there, hot enough for things to cook inside cars. He looked at me but said nothing. The next day, while packing his car, he started searching frantically for his memory cards, saying all his games were gone. Mom suggested maybe he packed them already. He insisted they were in his desk and he needed them. He had over 500 hours on his Final Fantasy save alone. He searched for hours, tearing apart his room, the living room, even my room. He accused me directly, demanding to know where they were. I asked why I would touch his stuff when he never let me play anyway. He had to leave without them because his college orientation wouldn't wait. As he got into his smelly car with windows already down, I waved goodbye. Mom said it was too bad about his games. Maybe they'd turn up someday and she could mail them. He just said maybe. The look he gave me as he drove away told me he knew what happened but couldn't prove it. The memory cards stayed buried, some eventually uncovered by rain or animals, others probably still there today. I heard later from Mom that even after multiple cleanings, the smell never left his car. In the Arizona heat, it would come back every summer. I never told anyone what I did until now, but when Pickles show up at family dinners, I notice he always pushes his plate away. After a car accident 3 years ago, I got a service dog named Rex to help with my mobility issues. He's been with me through everything, trained to help me maintain independence despite my condition. I've lived in my neighborhood for 5 years. Most neighbors are friendly and know Rex is a service dog. I always clean up after him, and he only relieves himself at the park. Last week, I was coming home from physical therapy. It was a bad pain day, and I wanted to get home and rest. Rex walked beside me, doing his job. I noticed a neighbor standing on her lawn with a garden hose. I'd seen her around but never talked to her much. She always looked unhappy when people walked past her house. I nodded at her and kept walking. Suddenly, cold water hit me from behind. The woman had sprayed Rex and me with her hose in freezing January weather. I turned around, wet and cold. I asked her what that was for. The woman, who I later learned was Karen, held her hose and looked proud. She told me that's what I deserved for letting my dog poop on her lawn every day. I was confused. Rex never went on people's lawns and I always cleaned up after him. I told her my dog hadn't been on her lawn and that he was a service dog trained for specific areas. Karen said I was lying. She claimed dogs peed and pooped on her lawn all the time and she was tired of it. She said she'd been watching me walk by for weeks. She got more upset while talking, and Rex became anxious because he sensed I was stressed. I told her I didn't know what she thought she saw, but it wasn't Rex. I added that spraying us with water was wrong. Karen said she didn't care and was teaching dog owners a lesson. She lifted the hose again. I was already wet and shaking, and Rex's fur was soaked. I told her to stop or I'd call the police because this was assault. Karen told me to go ahead, saying the police would take her side. I called 911 with shaking hands and told them what happened. The dispatcher said they'd send someone soon. While we waited, Karen kept talking about dog poop and sometimes threatened to spray us again. I stayed away from her and tried to comfort Rex, who was shaking from the cold water. 10 minutes later, a police car arrived. 2 officers got out and walked toward us. The first officer asked what the problem was. I explained what happened while Karen kept interrupting me. Karen yelled that my dog pooped on her lawn every day and she was protecting her property. The second officer asked Karen if she sprayed me and my service dog with water. Karen said yes and that she'd do it again because dog owners needed to learn. The officer looked at me. The first officer asked if Rex was a service dog. I showed them Rex's papers, which I always carry. I told them he helps with my mobility issues after my accident and never goes to the bathroom during walks except at the park. The second officer asked Karen if she had proof that my dog left waste on her lawn. Karen said she sees dog poop on her lawn all the time and it had to be me. The first officer said that wasn't evidence and asked if she had cameras or other proof. Karen said she didn't need proof and knew what she saw. The officers looked at each other. The second officer told Karen that spraying someone with water without permission was assault, especially in cold weather. He also said interfering with a service animal was against the law. Karen got angry. She asked if they were taking my side and said it was ridiculous. She tried to rush at me, but the officers stopped her. The first officer told her to turn around and put her hands behind her back. They handcuffed Karen, who screamed about her rights. The second officer asked if I wanted to press charges. I was still cold, and Rex was still wet and uncomfortable. I nodded and said yes. The officers helped me file a report, and they took Karen to the station. They told me to warm up myself and Rex quickly to avoid getting sick. The next few weeks were busy with statements and legal stuff. I found out Karen had fought with other neighbors too. She had been angry at dog owners in the neighborhood for months. When the court date came, I was nervous but wanted to finish this. I brought Rex's training proof and service dog papers. I also had a letter from my doctor about my medical condition and need for a service animal. In court, Karen tried to look like the victim. She claimed dog owners had been ruining her lawn for years. Her lawyer argued she was just protecting her property. When asked for proof that my dog left waste on her lawn, she had nothing. No pictures, no witnesses, just her claims. The judge wasn't happy. The judge asked Karen if she attacked me and my service dog based on a guess with no proof. Karen said it wasn't assault and was just water. The judge said it was water in freezing temperatures aimed at someone with medical issues and their service dog. He said that was assault. Karen was found guilty of assault and interfering with a service animal. She had to pay a fine of $500, do 40 hours of community service, and take anger management classes. The judge also ordered her to stay at least 100 feet away from me and Rex. When we left court, I felt relieved. The Homeowners Association heard about what happened and warned Karen about her behavior. Since then, I've heard from neighbors that Karen keeps to herself now. I sometimes see her watching from her window when Rex and I walk by, but she stays away from us. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.